What's happening, everybody? Welcome once again. This is Syracuse Basketball Postgame, presented by Krause Health, coming to you live here on the Syracuse Orange Basketball Facebook page, on Twitter and YouTube, as Syracuse goes down to Tallahassee in a game that was truly a tale of two halves. The Orange trailed by 6 at halftime. Only Joe Girard and Jesse Edwards showed up in that half, and it even took about a half of a half for Jesse to come through. But Joe Girard ends up with 26 points, Jesse with 18 points. Judah Mintz just takes over for a good portion of the second half, aggressively attacking the rim. That was huge for the Orange. They needed that spark. They needed someone else to step in. And then all of a sudden, you have Chris Bell hitting a couple of threes. You have Malik Brown helping out. You got a team effort. Syracuse stormed the boards. They were a -8 at halftime on the boards, end up winning 39-34 on that mark. They were +12 at one point on the boards in the second half. So a nice effort to improve to 15-10 and 8-6 in ACC play so far this year. And I'll tell you where this could really come into effect, folks, and that is in the ACC tournament, because this was the only matchup between Syracuse and Florida State in the regular season. If it comes down to a tiebreaker between Syracuse and Florida State, the Orange now have the tiebreaker and would get the first day bye. You don't want to be playing on that first day at the ACC tournament and have to win 5 games. And we all know if Syracuse is going to make the NCAA tournament, they're going to have to win the ACC tournament. So every bit helps. They've got the tiebreaker there, and a nice effort for the Orange. Let's get some of your comments in here before we check some stats and look at a couple of other things. Iris just simply says Joe Girard. 26 points. Guys, I've said it all year. The Joe Girard hate is misguided. It's ridiculous. We're not quite at, Jerry McNamara 10 bleeping games territory, but I can tell you this team is nowhere near the position they're in without Girard having games like tonight. Well said there, Iris. Dave says momentum heading into a huge dome week next week. It really is, Dave, as we'll get into. The next 4 games are really big for Syracuse in a lot of ways. Gerald says, great game, good game. Judah, awesome in the second half. Doug says people are happy with mediocrity. Q should have won by 20. I can't wait for Jim to tell everyone how great Florida State is in his presser. So nothing satisfies Doug. Syracuse gets a win, and he says they should have won by 20. We're going to be that guy tonight. Okay. Dale says, as usual, when they hustled on defense and moved without the ball, things went much better. Sloppy game to start, as David notes here. Where were the Florida State fans? Yeah, Florida State's having a rough go of it, 8-13 going into this game tonight. They actually have picked up 6 ACC wins, but they've had injuries. It's just been a wreck of a year for Leonard Hamilton and company, and that building only about half full. Jimmy says, JB for life. Free throws matter, as Dale notes. Syracuse hitting some key free throws down the stretch. Florida State did not. Iris with another great point here. Chris Bell had 7 rebounds tonight. That's what you've been looking for from Chris Bell. We're going to go over some other numbers coming up here shortly, but he won't get called out by Boeheim on that one. The backcourt, huge tonight, as Rick notes here. Orange guards figured it out after halftime. Never seen a Leonard Hamilton team so bad. Neither have I. And it's just relations with injuries. I saw a comment earlier today that Leonard Hamilton had this week about how he miscalculated some things, some players he thought he'd have coming back versus what happened there, the transfer portal and all that fun stuff. You still figure Florida better than they are. Really just surprising to see how down they are. As John jumps in to say, Judah, great second half, learned from his mistakes, a good experience with closing games. Now through the next 4 are the games you have to win, and a golden opportunity to do it against the upper echelon teams. Look, Syracuse is taking care of business against the teams below them in the ACC standings. Now they've got 4 games upcoming, all teams at the top of the league. Use these of closing out games. Judah Mintz learning from mistakes. Second game in a row, he had to recover from something. It was Boston College. He was pulled out of the game. Defensive miscues, overcame that. He saw an opening. He attacked the rim and found his groove and found his game. And Florida State was up. And this was after Florida State, guys, as you saw, just dominated in the paint. McLeod was huge. Cleveland was getting to the rim. And then Syracuse just kind of took it back and said, no, we'll dominate in the paint on our side. And hitting the boards was huge. You get those 7 from Bell. It was a difference of Syracuse had a 39-34 edge. That's huge. That's Chris Bell coming up on the boards, right? You need somebody else getting at it on the rebounds tonight. Steve says Mintz is the real deal. Brian noting finally arrived with 8 minutes in the game after struggling with an 8-win team. Look, that's just Syracuse for you. Would you rather they fall apart down the stretch or find themselves on the stretch? Syracuse has had some trouble closing out against good teams. I'm curious to see how these lessons pay off against better competition coming out tonight. But, they did close this one out tonight. Richard saying, I'm excited about next year's team with all the experience the freshmen are getting. Geez, you never know who's coming back and who's not, right? Portal and all that. But if they can get a majority of these guys back, if you can get a couple of key guys out of the portal to give you some experience, then next year is something to think about. It's one of the younger teams in the ACC, and they'll be much more experienced and have kind of gone through it a little bit, particularly in games like this where you got to come through in the second half. Brian jumps in to say, love those orange Cuse road uniforms, number 52. Looking good on Chris Bell. He seems to be coming around. Interesting how coach left him in the game to figure things out. Yeah, he left him in. I saw Benny down in the stretch. I think they went to Bell a little bit too much for some three-pointers that Syracuse was able to overcome. Better teams are going to kill you there and get the ball, go back and score, whereas Florida State couldn't. But look, Boeheim stuck with him tonight because he was rebounding. He was better on defense. He wasn't great on defense, but there was no reason to take him out, especially when he's hitting a couple of shots and giving you a compliment there with, Joe Girard was great, but Florida State, certainly clamped down on him more in the second half and made his life a little more difficult to shoot the ball. He did get inside and score, but that's what you'll take from a guy like Chris Bell. And speaking of which, let's look at the numbers here. You guys keep going at it here in the comments, but let's look at a couple of things statistically. Girard, 26 points tonight, 9 of 16 shooting, 5 of 8 from 3-point range. Girard with 7 assists on the night. Jesse Edwards with 18 points. He struggled to shoot at first, but kind of found himself after that, and he was a perfect 6 of 6 from the free throw line. He had 12 rebounds on the night, so another double-double for Jesse. We talked about Judah Mintz just getting much more aggressive in the second half of this game with 16 points. He was 6 of 12, shooting the ball 4 of 5 at the free throw line. He dished out 6 assists. It was a great night by standards of what we have not seen from Chris Bell. Then he got 10 points, hit a couple of three. He actually had 1 3, but a couple of shots in the second half and 6 rebounds. He gets 6 rebounds from Chris Bell. That's huge because Malik Brown gave you 5. Wasn't scoring that much tonight. Didn't have the offensive opportunities. Benny Williams, the numbers don't look good, but Benny had somewhat of a presence out there tonight. He was on the floor down the stretch. I guess they got that going for him, which is nice. But that's something you did not see in the first half. It was all Girard and Jesse in the first half and nobody else to be found until Judah got it going. Chris made some contributions, and we mentioned even Malik got a couple of scores in there. Everybody kind of chipped in the second half to take just enough pressure off Joe and Jesse to get this one. It was Cleveland, actually, that led Florida State with 19 points. Green with 17. McLeod was huge in the first half with 12 points. He cooled off a bit in the second half, but his career high was 12 points. He had 16 tonight. He was averaging 4 points a game coming in. All told, the Orange shot 45%. That's 28 of 16. Florida State was 26 of 67 at 39%. The Orange just 6 of 21 from 3-point range, but Florida State 9 of 35. Yowza, a lot of 3-pointers for the Seminoles there. Syracuse 14 of 17 at the free throw line. Florida State just 6 of 8 there. We mentioned how big the rebounding was. Syracuse out rebounds Florida State 39 to 34. The offensive rebounds end up being even. It was a big edge for Florida State in the first half. They were crashing the offensive boards, but not so much in the second half of this game. Syracuse wins points in the paint, 40 to 34. Jesse big there. Judah really big there for the Orange as well. So all told, you take care of business against 2 teams you should beat, and now you've got 4 straight games upcoming here. They get a little time off here, a rare weekend off for the Orange on the way here. They'll next play against NC State at the JMA Wireless Dome on Valentine's Day. So they get a little time to regroup, refresh. Confidence and momentum's tough to maintain over a week, but they need that time off to kind of regroup a little bit. It's been a heck of a week with the Jim Boeheim comments and all the attention that was put on that. They just needed, and that even came off a win over Boston College, right? So it wasn't pressure they had to relieve because of a loss, but just a lot of distractions and outside noise and inside noise, and a lot of commentary this week from yours truly included on the head coach. But you go out there, you get a win. We'll simmer that down just a little bit here. But now you got NC State. You get Duke after that 10 days from now. Then you turn around and play Clemson and Pittsburgh. These are all really good teams. Pitt has already beaten Syracuse this year. As we know, Clemson can shoot the lights out from three-point range, and there's a reason that they're at the top of the league this year. Duke's Duke. Duke's not the typical top 25 Duke, but that will not be an easy game for the Orange. And NC State is one of the best players in the league and has provided to be a real thorn in the side for Syracuse in recent years. As Steve notes here, good to see Steve. The key was keeping them out of the middle. When they shut that off, Syracuse not only got stops, but rebounded better, a trait of the teams that Syracuse had a decade ago. Gerald says, anybody think J.J. Starling transfers out of Notre Dame and comes to Syracuse? Head coach his last season, and it was one of the main reasons he chose Notre Dame. I think that's something to keep an eye on for sure, Gerald, because Mike Bray's out there. Syracuse was his second choice. Portal offers these opportunities. I don't think JJ wants to carry the load with what will be a team that's losing a bunch of seniors. So I think that's something to keep an eye on in the offseason for sure. There's Mike from El Paso, says the late block on Judah could have been a charge. Wasn't that the same type of play that really cost us in two games that didn't go our way? Yeah, that will fall in the woulda, coulda, shoulda department for sure. But good observation there. Steve says Chris Bell should stick with 52, right? He rebounded in 52. He had to change his jersey because it ripped in the first half. I believe he had some blood on there too. So, I mean, you can't change the number now, right? You can't go back to the old 0-0. James says the press conference against Virginia and his comments against several other ACC teams sealed his fate, in my opinion. We'll see about that, unless they got a deep ACC tournament run in their back pocket here. We'll just have to keep an eye on that. Michelle checking in from L.A. So many non-calls on Florida State by TV Teddy and crew. I mean, yeah, Syracuse got to the free throw line 17 times, so not too shabby there, but not a surprise either with TV Teddy and crew. Okay, just catching up with you guys here. Another vote for JJ coming to Syracuse. That'd be huge for sure if that was the case. John noting any intel on what Forbes, Larinaga, and Capel talked about with Boeheim during his apologies. I wish I could give you some intel on that. I checked on that. They kept that tight-lipped. That was between them. I know that Boeheim called Forbes at 2:00 in the morning Sunday. Coaches stay up late. They're watching games. They're watching film. They kind of know they're up late. Capel was very diplomatic, but certainly didn't get into details. I'm not sure if Jim even talked to Jim Larinaga. I'm sure he did. But there was a funny moment earlier this week. It didn't seem to be intentional, but Jim Larinaga is on the court at Miami, and he reaches in his pocket. He pulls out a wad of cash that he's got in his pocket. He just transfers it to another pocket. And a lot of people were saying that was kind of like a subtle shot at the buy-in players thing, which Miami totally did. See, that's what made Boeheim's comments so off base. And that Pitt and Wake Forest were nowhere near the level that Miami was. Pitt didn't even buy any players, technically. Neither did Wake Forest, honestly. Everybody's getting a little NIL money and kind of that new world we're in here. But they did not deserve to be in that conversation. And that one interview resulted in 3 clarifications: an apology to Pitt and Wake Forest and somewhat to Miami. There was the clarification about who decides Jim Boeheim's fate when he said it's my decision. And then he said it's totally up to the university. And then he had to clarify what he said about NIL and what Adam Weitzman was or wasn't paying certain players at Syracuse at this point. So that was a mess. That was a thing. So I don't have any intel beyond that, John. Everybody seems to be good now, but it is noteworthy that Syracuse is going to play both Pittsburgh and Wake Forest before the season is out. And I'm sure Jeff Capel is not going to forget about that. He did not seem to be thrilled with Jim implying those things. Capel's having a hell of a year. I think he's the ACC coach of the year. There's 7 games to go, 6 games to go in some cases, but I think it's going to be hard to top him. Turning around a Pitt team, I think was picked to finish, if not last, at the bottom of the league. But that'll be spicy with the Syracuse Pitt rematch coming up here. Chris Bell's most complete game, as Al said. Can't disagree with that, particularly when he hits the rebounds. And some of the shots he took, I think they relied a little bit too much on Bell, but they were open shots. And Chris Bell, what I love about his game, all right, we have criticized Chris Bell so much, and for good reason in some ways so far this year, but he gets off that shot really quick. He's got a really smooth shot. If you get it to him on the wing, catch, release, shot, right? Just gets it comfortable. There was even one shot he had where he caught it, on kind of the far side, right in front of the bench. He got it, pump fake, got the defender to jump, and just slid about a foot to his right. So this way, to his right, and got the shot up. That's smooth, and that's only going to get better as he progresses. Now, I think he's a candidate to go in the portal. I think Benny Williams is a candidate to go in the portal. You're going to lose players you don't think you're going to lose to either the pros or the portal. I hope they both come back, because if Syracuse can get that core to come back here, they're a year older, a year wiser, a year better. And I think Chris Bell is a more complete player next year, but he's got that offensive rhythm and he's got that offensive smoothness. Jones saying, go Joe Girard, who dropped in 26 points, which we just take for granted, right? But he had to work for those shots. His shot selection was great. He had 18 against Boston College, but half of that came at the free throw line. Tonight, he was just hitting his shots. And when Joe Girard that's what you need him at. Tonight, it was 5 of 8 at the 3-point line. When he's doing that, he's hard to stop. I mean, the magic number, believe it or not, with Joe is 10 points. When Joe Girard does not score 10 points, Syracuse is 1-5 this year. So it doesn't sound like a lot, because Joe typically, he's averaging about 20 points per game this year, and he can have these big nights like he did tonight. But the key with Joe is to get him going in the first half and then let other people get involved in the offense in the second half. Jesse didn't look like he was having a good game early on, but he adjusted. Florida State threw a couple of different guys at him. I was worried about foul trouble and some confusion there, but Jesse owned Quentin Post against BC, and he kind of settled himself. How about that reverse jam that Jesse Edwards had? It's one of the highlights of the year. I can't believe it took me this long to mention that. That was a smooth catch it in the air reverse jam for Jesse Edwards. Fantastic stuff there. If you could criticize Judah for one thing, he missed a couple of dunks in this game, but he didn't let it affect him. That's what I love about Judah Mintz. The next shot's always going in. That guy had two really bad missed dunks, but still attacked the rim and still was confident to get to the rim and had a couple of moves after that. That shows you just how proficient he is around the basket at this point. As Michelle notes, NIL, kind of the Wild West at this point. Jeff saying a big win to stay in top 9 of the ACC tournament, get the first round bye. With winning the tournament, the only chance to make the NCAAs. Great point, Jeff. We were talking about that earlier. Adam says, Brent, do you think Joe will use his extra year? If I had to guess, I would say yes, because he's not a candidate to play pro basketball at any level. I don't think he's G League material at this point. One more year, why wouldn't you take it, right? Play as long as you can in college basketball. Live the life. He'll get some big NIL deals next year. And why wouldn't you? But, we'll see if he's got other plans. I do not think Jesse will be back. Remember, Jesse's got another year of eligibility as well. I think that Jesse would benefit from the COVID year. John notes, didn't have the full season last year. He's gotten better and better year after year and could have a Rakeem Christmas like 5th year. How about BC beating Virginia Tech? Upsets aplenty. Joe could play in Europe if he wanted to. Maybe he's ready for that. But if I was him, I'd come back, right? As the great chef from South Park once said, there's a time and a place for everything. It's called college, right? So stay in college as long as you can. What did Chris Farley say in Tommy Boy? A lot of people go to school for 7 years. Yeah, they're called doctors, right? Great flick. Mike says, Bell has gotten playing time, freedom to shoot, and he's played well most of the time. Just don't see a plus for him starting over at a new school. None of the transfers that left are doing well, but one guard, Kadari Richmond's done pretty good at Seton Hall. I think Kadari Richmond should have never transferred, from the sense of he shouldn't have been forced out. Speaking of him and Gerard, I think they could have made that work, but Judah Mintz has come in and looks like maybe a player that can do at the very least what Kadari Richmond was doing. Richmond was a bigger player, but look, Judah's getting to the rim. He's got to develop a shot. For those that say that he might explore the pros, I think that's a distinct possibility, by the way. You got to have a 3-point shot to get drafted. And he doesn't have one right now. He would certainly benefit from another year. Some guys are ready to go, and they'd rather develop and play in the G League. I certainly think he'd play in the G League next year, but we'll have to see how that goes, particularly with 7 games down the stretch with some better teams. And if Syracuse can somehow make a deep run in the ACC tournament and by some miracle get in the NCAA tournament, then, he'll turn some heads and get certainly more attention at this point. But those moves around the rim are terrific. It's just honing his game. And do you want him to hone it here, or do you want him to hone it at the G League? If you're looking at it from an NBA perspective, they don't really have a choice anymore. You kind of have to take a chance on somebody and hope that they develop into the player you think they can be. You're not drafting who they are. You're drafting who you think they can be. So I know you guys are probably getting upset because I'm talking about the pros and the portal with 7 games to go here, but you got to think about these things, right? Even Jim Boeheim talks about next year a lot on his radio show and other places, just kind of the nature of the beast at this point, right? As Tawan notes, he's doing good at Seton Hall and good for Kadari. I like Kadari and I like this game. I just think it's a shame how that played out, but there was Judah Mintz ready to come in and take a spot at this point. Kevin says that's where NIL might keep a player in college versus the G League. Kevin, that is a great point. Let's keep that comment up there for a second. Well, I think it's great that Adam Weitzman is putting out money for recruits. Recruiting is important. I think it's more important to invest in the people are doing well. Can you convince a Judah Mintz to stay at Syracuse and pay him either equal to or more than what he'd get in the G League? Because if it's just about money, I think that can happen. I think you can certainly up the ante. I mean, you go to the G League, you're going to make, it varies, but it's like, 80 grand, 100 grand, depending on where you get drafted and what you negotiate. That's where name, image, and likeness is going to help players like him stay and convince him to stay and develop at college. Because if you're just going for the money, well, now they can pay you. So I think the investment there is better to keep a Judah on board, to keep players in line, and think about what you're getting here. When you get out of the portal, are players have a certain skill set and you feel more comfortable with them. Syracuse is going to have, in theory, if you can get them to stay, 6 players coming back that have all gotten significant experience this year, and what you can pay them, and what they're worth. And this still just creeps me out in a way that we're having this conversation about college basketball because it's been forbidden for so long, but we're in a new world, right? I'd rather invest there than recruiting. Now, recruiting is important, right? But you still don't know what you're getting, unless it's like a top 5 can't miss Carmelo Anthony type recruit. You're still getting guys that you're taking a chance on. You're not quite sure what they're going to do when they get here. So like Michelle said, give Judah a cereal deal, right? Just like Buddy. There we have it. Al says NIL kept several quarterbacks out of the draft to cash in the football realm. We'll see if that is the case in basketball as well. Julie says, Brian, that's true. I'd like to see them run up and threaten to grab the ball sometimes. Syracuse still has some flaws that they're working on at this point. That would be one of them. Matt saying maybe NIL keeps someone like Judah around, and you could, we already highlighted that. It was so good, Matt, we highlighted it twice. But that's the kind of discussions we're having, right? Especially for a team that, Judah Flakes. There we go. We got our creative caps on here. Mint. Is there a mint thing? Junior Mints, MITN. Z. Is there a candy company we can get on there, right? Breath Mints, right, Chuck? Got our creative caps on here. I like that. There we go. Adam thinking maybe NIL shouldn't be offered until after your first year of school. I don't know about that. I think that ship has sailed, right? I don't think we can be holding out in that case right at this point. Michelle likes what Chuck said earlier. There you go. Breath Mints. What else we got here from you guys? Now we're giving NIL ideas. We do it all on this show, right? We don't just talk basketball. We talk business. There's Robbie who says if the NCAA had ruled that players can keep their scholarships and make money, but NIL deals can't exceed $500,000, wouldn't that have alleviated the arguments that Jim and many coaches have been making? That's a fair point. That's a fair point. And it's just they're so late to this game, right? They just opened up the NIL game with no regulations whatsoever. Now they're trying to backtrack on it. And it's like, how can you backtrack on this thing? There are no rules to start with. We're just making it up as we go along here. Kevin says, Judah looks like he's starting to figure things out a little bit. Doesn't look like he's forcing things too much and taking shots that are more in his repertoire. Kevin, that's a great point. And what I like about Judah is he doesn't back down. It reminds me of that great Tom Petty song. He's just, the confidence is always there. And tonight would have been a great night for a lot of freshmen to just kind of bow out confidence-wise because he missed two big dunks. There were a couple embarrassing plays, frankly, but he just kept coming because he knows he can get to the rim. He found something there. He's got the moves, and he's relentless. Now, this is what I think we're starting to see is Judah's hitting the freshman wall a little bit and has to overcome some fatigue and has to fight through some things, and teams that are not tonight, with Florida State, but teams that start to see you for a second time. And it's just natural for a freshman to kind of hit the skids a little bit there. But man, that kid's got fight. He's got the want to, he's got that dog in him, as they say, right? And he ends up with 14, and that was big. And Syracuse needed other contributions in this game because in the first half, it was the Joe and Jesse show. And even Jesse took a while to get into this game. So what Judah has is not only what he's improving on, but he has intangibles you cannot teach. Right? That you just don't know. Speaking of recruiting, that you just don't know when you recruit players. Do they have that, to use old sports writer terms, do they have want to and grit and heart and attack the rim and just things that you can't teach? Judah's got it, right? And that's a lot to work with. And as a coach, you got to be happy you have a player like that. I like what Judah's been doing, Scott, not only speeding up his game, but he's adding to his repertoire, to use that word again. He can get away from the basket a little bit. He took a couple of hooks against BC, that reverse jam that we talked about tonight. His footwork still needs work, no pun intended, but I think we're seeing Jesse having an all ACC type year. I mean, just game in and game out, this guy's getting double doubles, and we're starting to see a true pro talent emerging before our very eyes here. What do you say we ended on that note, guys? And as noted, we're going to be dark for a while in terms of post-game shows because Syracuse does not play again until Valentine's Day. So plenty of time to think of something to get for your sweetie. How about Syracuse basketball? Watch the game. Go to the game if you're here in central New York, right? So that's when we'll meet again post-game wise on Valentine's Day. That's Tuesday, February 14th when the Orange take on NC State. Programming reminder, we do have Orange Weekly tomorrow. Orange Weekly streams live on all these channels you're watching now, Thursdays at noon Eastern time. You can always watch the replay on all these channels or check it out at syracuse.com or on all of our social media channels and watch the replay in case you miss it. Right? Yeah, get your sweetie a win for Valentine's Day. There you go, Lori. That's what we're talking about. Iris, good to see you. Do we wear orange on Valentine's Day? Yes, we do. David says, Brent, you bring the chocolates. There you go. Good night to Matt. Thank you, Dale. And thank you, Mike. And thanks to all of you for watching. So come on by for Orange Weekly tomorrow, noon. Come back for post game next time, Tuesday, Valentine's Day. We would love it if you could be there. Enjoy the rest of your night, everybody. This has been Syracuse basketball post game presented by Krause Health. The Orange take down Florida State 76-67.